Man, let me tell you, don't let anybody start putting you in the divisional GOAT discussion, because as soon as it happens, you're going to lose your title. It is the realest curse this sport has ever produced. Soon as people started saying Woodley was knocking on GSP's door, destroyed by Usman, who got head kicked out of his own GOAT discussion. Aljamain Sterling, man, he might be up there with Cruz. Nope, here comes the diabetes show. Cain Velasquez might take heavyweight GOAT status. Just kidding, there's no air in Mexico. And now, welcome to the club, Merab and Pantoja. Is it insane that people were actually saying Pantoja was getting close to Mighty Mouse? Yes, but it was being said. Merab absolutely had a stronger claim at 135 though. I legitimately assumed that he was going to hold that title for, I guess, as long as he wanted to. He seemed about as unstoppable a force as we've had at 135. And I certainly didn't think that Petr Yan was going to win the belt off him. I mean, Merab 50-45'd him the first time around, and that was just 2 years ago. Now, all of a sudden, Petr is going to reverse 25 minutes? Nah, there was a reason that Merab was a more than 4-1 favorite. Habib said something that always stuck with me. He said, nobody has two primes. Piotr's prime was 4 years ago by this point. Well, I guess he never left his prime apparently, or Habib is wrong. If you asked me to list out who was gonna take the belt from Merab, it would have taken a minute to get down to Petr Yan. And it's not like he got some fluke knockout victory. He beat the shit out of Merab for the whole 5. It was one of the best bantamweight performances we have ever seen. This is right up there with Cody versus Dom and far more brutal. It really goes to show you that the more we think we know about this sport, the more we realize that we don't know jack shit. It was interesting that afterwards, Merab said that he wanted to make for a more entertaining style in the bout, and so that's why he didn't go for as many takedowns, even though he went for 20 plus. And I know there was a lot of talk about the toll that it takes on the body trying to do 4 title fights in a single year, which had never been done up to this point. Maybe there's a reason for that, but I don't think anybody is really adding too many qualifiers here to Jan's performance. He looked amazing. He was amazing. There's no way to downplay it or sugarcoat it. And to be fair, I don't think Merab was trying to do that. I just think he was being honest about himself and how he saw the fight. Any way you look at it though, Merab's title reign delivered. And that dude was a massive highlight of 2025. In a year with a whole bunch of major fight disappointments, he really brought something fun, and he capped it off with arguably the fight of the year, probably the best bantamweight title fight ever. It was a real scrappuccino. But now I'm wondering, where do we go from here? Even with his long reign, I don't know if you do the trilogy right away, do you? Surely he's got to beat at least one guy, right? Only because that was such a sustained and dominant performance. But then again, is there really another fight I want to see Yan in right now? No, it just doesn't seem fair to make him replicate that performance again right away. All that said, yeah, we gotta see a third fight between them at some point. How could we not? Dana did his typical I don't think about fights on Saturday night thing afterwards, so who knows? But man, what a performance and what a fucking fight. Of course, that wasn't the only shocking title exchange last night. Not sure how on earth anybody could have predicted the outcome of the Flyweight title bout. Sometimes these things happen in MMA. These exact things almost. Like when Shogun Rua, right at the start of the fight with Mark Coleman at Pride 31, tried planting his arm to brace himself, just like Pantoja, and the exact same outcome. Snap, crackle, pop, who wants breakfast? So what was Pantoja's injury? What was the extent of it? There's been quite a bit of confusion, it would seem, or at least as of me writing this after the card. Dr. Rogan diagnosed it as a broken arm in the cage and started matchmaking during his interview with Van. But at the end of the broadcast, Megan O'Leary said she was told the doctors categorized his injury as a dislocated shoulder with a spontaneous reduction, which I guess means it popped back in place itself. And Dana White said at the presser that the shoulder was the injury, that we were wrong, that it was not the elbow. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not gonna try to speculate. Doesn't really matter though, I guess. What matters is the dude hurt his arm, and the UFC replayed it 7,200 times. I'd also say there's a pretty good bet he's probably gonna need some time to recover, no matter what happened there. So what do you do with Van in the meantime? Well, if there's enough time, I say do a title fight. You got Tyra right there. Everybody loves a good comeback story. It's not like Pantoja's not gonna get his shot when he returns. So yeah, if he's not good to go in the short term, I say let it rip. There were some sour grapes about the level of celebration by Van after the fight, running around on his coach's shoulders and such. And while I do understand why fans would be like, dude, Gravity should be holding the title, I have to go back to that fight at Pride 31. Mark Coleman literally did the same thing. And if it's good enough for an American hero like Mark Coleman, then damn it, I'm not gonna say it's wrong. To be fair, he was actually almost immediately in a brawl with Shootabox after the stoppage and then celebrated sort of mockingly. But still, I'm not faulting Van for celebrating because this sport is brutal and any victory, no matter how you get it, is a victory. That's money. That's now title bookings. There's a ton to celebrate, even if you didn't do it, even if it's very unfortunate. And he was very apologetic to the UFC afterwards in private, which he didn't even need to be, which they also conveyed to him. So yeah, let the Van era begin, and I can't wait for Pantoja to heal up and get back to his legacy. Now, those weren't the only fights on this card last night. Great show, in fact, to end the ESPN era. Let's talk about it. The final UFC pay-per-view saw 14 fights with 7 KO, TKOs, 2 subs, 5 decisions for a total cage time of 2 hours, 3 minutes, 7 seconds. It was a night of major upsets. Of the 14 bouts, 8 favorites took victories, and while only 4 underdogs won, 2 of them were at the very top of the card, so the weight there is a bit heavier. Jan Blachowicz now has more draws since losing the light heavyweight title than he's had victories, which is one of the weirdest sentences I think I've uttered in one of these autopsies. For Bogdan Guskov, first draw in 22 fights. Welcome to the club. Henry Cejudo retired for real this time after a banger with Peyton Talbot. Triple C says goodbye as the 4th ever double champ, the 7th 2-division champion in UFC history, and I'm not sure if you knew this or not, but he was actually a gold medalist at the 2008 Summer Olympics. Let's add one more piece of hardware to his collection. Cejudo gets our Short King award. Thanks for the memories. While controversially early, no doubt, although to be honest, I don't think it would have changed much about the outcome, Tatsuro Taira finished Brandon Moreno with just 28 significant strikes, which is incredibly significant because prior to last night, Moreno had been hit with 1,117 of them in the UFC and never been finished. That earns Taira our Lego Master award. Remember all the times I've complained about Vitor Belfort earning the light heavyweight title against Randy Couture with a missed punch that injured his eye? Well, that disaster took 49 seconds. Pan and Van beat that by a whole 23 seconds, making it officially the fastest, worst title change in UFC history. I'd say congratulations, but I don't think that's the right word for it. The commentary team mentioned that Petr Yan had the formula to beat Merab. Well, if the formula to beat him is stuffing 22 takedowns, landing 5 of your own, so the most that's ever been landed on Merab, and then hitting him 159 times, I think it's safe to say that the formula now being out there doesn't put Merab in any more danger than usual, because who in the world is ever going to be able to replicate that performance against him? And that was it. We did it. ESPN is dead. UFC pay-per-view is dead, no matter what Dana says. The last time we're forking up $80, and here the whole way with me has been editor Max Randall. He is why these are out every Sunday after the card so early. Please show him some love on his socials and go check out his YouTube content. I gotta thank the channel members as well. Their support makes making these so fast so much easier. Hit the join button if you'd like to be a member too. There's exclusive content and it makes you awesome. Like and subscribe because even though pay-per-views are done, we'll still be covering all of these major numbered events just like we always do. Leave a comment on all things 323. I love reading them, and thank you for watching. Next event with an autopsy won't be for 6 weeks or so stay safe out there until then, and just come back and watch a bunch more of our videos that aren't autopsies. Thank you.